This is the Try Swim Coach podcast, where the most difficult leg of the triathlon becomes your friend, leaving your struggles and your competition behind you. TrySwimCoach.com, helping you to laugh at the water.
All right, welcome back to another episode of the Try Swim Coach podcast. This is Kevin, and this is episode number 100. And I also have assistant coach Chris Haig on the other line. Hey, Chris.
Hey, Kev, and congratulations on hitting 100.
Yeah, we're there. We have our triple-digit birthday now, so we're official. Finally.
If I was in better swim shape, I would do 100 by 100 to celebrate the occasion. But
I was thinking of that too when I saw that we were at number 100. I was thinking, what kind of a set can we give them? Like, is 100 100s, is that good? Or maybe we could go with more of a sprint type of thing, like 125s.
125s, I like it. Or we could do like 10 25s, 10 deck ups, and rotate through like 10 different activities.
Yeah, 10 by 10 set, right?
Yeah, I'll have to come up with something and tweet it out.
Yeah, that'd be great. When we release the episode, we'll have a workout for everyone. So be on the lookout for that. And so today we're going to talk about the 5 things that you need to do to get ready for your next race.
It's still early on, but the races will be there sooner than expected. We just had Ironman New Zealand. I know in California, the Desert Classic duathlon and triathlon just occurred today. And that kind of, in Southern California, that kicks off the race season. If you've kind of been pushing off training, pushing off getting organized and structured for the past 3 to 4 months and kind of been in hibernation, now is the time to start thinking about your race, even if your race is in August. I have a coaching client who is doing a race in August, but today was the first day where, we're 24 weeks out. Yeah. Now it's the time to start getting serious and start getting structured. If you think, my race is not till August or September, now is the time to start planning and starting to get race ready. If you've messed around in the past couple months, taken some time off, gotten away from the pool, haven't been really structured, been active, doing your other cross-country skiing, but you want to have a serious racing season, now is the time to start getting ready.
Yeah, and even if you're listening to this, this is once this podcast goes up, it's on iTunes and Stitcher and everything forever. So you may be listening to this at a different time of year, or you may be living in Australia where your season is kind of the reverse of ours here in North America. But it's a great resource to go back to no matter where you are, because if you're 24 weeks away or 16 weeks away or whatever it is, there are things that you need to start doing to get kind of ahead of the game. And we've been talking a lot in the past year about the high elbow catch, and that's been our theme, is you got to get that high elbow catch down. And so we wanted to veer off of that for a little bit, but we put up an article recently, and I wanted to mention the URL there of this article. It's called 5 Tips to Get a Stronger High Elbow Catch. So because we're so technique focused here at Try Swim Coach, we don't want to let a podcast go by without a little bit of talk about technique. And we won't get into the details of it, but if you go to tryswimcoach.com/high-elbow-catch, you'll see a nice photo of Chris himself swimming from underwater with a beautiful high elbow catch, and that's worth its weight in gold, I'd say, right there, that picture. But but we do have some tips there and some videos that we link to. So if you want to catch that, just go to that URL that I just gave out. I'll also have it linked in the show notes. So if you go to this episode, so it's tryswimcoach.com/blog, you can find this episode, which is number 100. Then you'll see the link to that. So either way, but let's get into it. Let's get into the race tips, the race season tips. Number 1 is plan.
Yep, and you don't want to walk into training completely blind. You want to start with a plan. So if you're 20 weeks out or 24 weeks out, that's kind of like the ideal build. Figure out, talk to your coach, find a training plan, and start structuring what the next 24 weeks are going to look like. Start with your race day and build back. And so you want to start with a plan. You want to start getting organized. Look at how much time you have to train per week. Figure out a realistic training program, and, go with it. If you're 12 weeks out and you've been procrastinating, then you definitely want to start getting serious and figure out what your limitations are and getting into those and dealing with those. And if you're just 8 weeks out and you're just crunched for time and you have no idea what to do, then, it's figure out what you can do. Don't go completely crazy and dig yourself into a hole and won't be able to recover by race day. Figure out what you can do and go with it. In this, starting with a plan, you want to focus on your limiters. If your limiters is, hill climbing and you're doing Lake Placid, then you want to address that in your plan. If you're a really slow swimmer, then you definitely need to figure out, most likely in your training plan, do 4 to 5 swims a week instead of just cutting it with 2. So your training plan and your plan should address your limitations.
Yeah, and with the plans, I mean, we actually have swim training plans that are specific for each distance race, so depending on what you're doing. And we just recently partnered, by the way, with Training Peaks. So all of our plans are available on Training Peaks. If you just want the swimming, if swimming is your thing that you want to hone in on this year, we have those available with Training Peaks if you're one of those people that likes to get in there and have your plans all in one place. But yeah, this is a really important thing. A lot of people come to us and they say, oh, I've got a race that's, a month out or a month and a half out. And it's like, that's kind of tough if you're just starting to train and you've got 6 or 7 weeks or something. Yeah. Especially for swimming. I mean, yeah, you can kind of skate by with some, if you've got a running background or if you've got a cycling background, you can make that happen in a few weeks. But with swimming, part of it is the feel for the water. Part of it is just the technique. I mean, there's the things that everybody needs to work on, not just the beginners that are important for stroke technique. So you need a few weeks just for that. So yeah, so number 1 is really important. Now, number 2 is the intensity.
Yeah, and that's where you need to start figuring out your zones. So you have short distance races like sprints and Olympics, and then you have more endurance where you have half irons and irons. And if you are doing sprints and Olympics, that's a different, cardiovascular system than 70.3s and 140.6. In sprints and Olympics, you want to be going at a higher intensity. You are not going to be going at your MAF pace. You're going to be going at a higher intensity because it's a shorter race and you can. So, in your training program, you need to have a place for dealing with that intensity. Picking up the intensity, whether it's if you're doing a reverse periodization and it's still junk weather out there and you just can't get outside and you don't have the time to get outside, then do the intensity now and start focusing on some of the longer stuff later on. If you've got a while, then your short stuff where you're working at, all-out efforts or, just above functional threshold power or, your anaerobic threshold, that could be closer to the race. So you need to figure out your zones, especially if you're doing the Olympics and the sprints. But on the other side of the spectrum, when you're doing the endurance races, you also need to figure out your zones because you want to be able to figure out what your body can handle and start training at it. So if you figure out that if you're going at, zone 2 intensity, you need to figure out your zone 2 so you can train that and hopefully closer to your race be able to increase that zone 2 effort and that zone 2 pace over time. So figuring out your zones will allow you to specialize your training program to you so that come race day, you can, slip into that zone and go for it.
Right. And I interviewed last time, Mark Sisson was on the podcast, and he talked about periodization and, kind of a different idea, actually a more even simpler way to train. And he also talked about the 180 formula, which if that's something that you want to try, it's important to get that started early on because it's hard to switch back and forth from whatever, if you're doing some more traditional type of intensity and then you switch to 180. 180, if you do that, and when we talk about it, it's in Tri-Swim Coach podcast number 99. So if you want to go back and review what it is, it's basically 180 minus your age, and then you add or subtract based on what kind of shape you're in. But, that's kind of your target heart rate. But that might slow you way down depending on how you've been training in the past. And if you try it out, you may go from running to walking even. So that is something you want to decide, pretty early on and not do the switching back and forth.
Yeah, and the key to the 180 formula, and that works great especially for longer races because that's what you're going to be racing at. The key to that is because there's less stress applied to your body and your training system. You really need to start way in advance so that, over time you're able to, gradually over the weeks you increase the volume and stress your body out a little bit more each time, that you're able to get to the distances that you need to finish your race. If you're only training 10 hours at your 180 minus your age and you're doing an Ironman, that might not be enough stress to be able to get you through the race.
Exactly. So number 3 is simulate your conditions.
And especially for early season races, if you're traveling to a destination race, for example, if you live in, New England and you're traveling to Oceanside in the next couple of weeks, Oceanside's in San Diego, California, or near San Diego, you're going to, get hit by hotter conditions than you're used to, sunnier weather than you're used to, and even if you've been training a lot, your body's going to kind of go into shock and say, I haven't trained in this, and your body's going to malfunction. Or if you're going to Galveston in April, going from cold conditions to hot and humid conditions, and you haven't been training in that, your body's not going to know what to do. So it's not going to be the most pleasant of races. So you need to do your research, figure out what the normal temperatures are, what the normal humidity is, and start mimicking that in your training. If your race is coming up very, very, just in the next month and you haven't been training outside at all, try to get outside as much as possible. If your race is in hot conditions and you live in a place that's really cold and actually has a winter, then you need to, train and you still can't get outside, you need to train with like a heater next to you or a humidifier to simulate those conditions so that come race day, your body's used to it.
Yeah. So how would you recommend, let's talk about like the Pacific Ocean, for example. It's pretty freezing cold around this time of year and actually most of the year. Maybe get in an ice bath. It's
hard to mimic these conditions, especially in the water. But, there's some people do like to recommend, the cold thermogenesis, that, you take a cold shower every once in a while so your body gets used to cold. And, that's psychology mostly. I don't think that you actually will be a better swimmer by taking colder showers, but at least when you hop into the ocean, even with a full-length wetsuit, you'll be able, that first shock reaction won't freak you out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and again, we say this all the time, but it's important to warm up. It's really, really, really important to warm up, especially when the water is going to be cold. And I know there's a lot of cold races early in the season, no matter where you are. Like in March, April, May, it's still pretty cold. Most water is pretty cold, especially where we are here in California. So, yeah.
And also, test out your, and this is kind of, 2.5 right now, or 3.5 for tips, but test out your gear. Test out your wetsuit. If your wetsuit's been sitting in storage for the past 6 months, you need to soak it before you put it on just to allow it to stretch out because it does shrink. So, test out the gear that you're going to be racing in, and if you can, get to open water so you can test out your wetsuit beforehand, test out anything you might need extra.
Right. Number 4 is getting outside.
Yep, and this ties exactly into what we were talking about previous time, is doing your research. But getting outside, you're going to be racing outside. You're not going to be racing inside on trainers. You're not going to be racing on Zwift. You're not going to be training on racing on a treadmill. So you need to get outside so that your body's used to it. Training on a treadmill and racing outside on the roads, very different situation, especially on the trainer, where you engage different muscles when you're outside compared to on the trainer, so you need to get outside. And when it comes to water, getting in some open water swim practices if you can will help.
Right. And yeah, I've been doing a little bit of running on the treadmill, the dead mill, in other words. And the only reason, it's not like the weather's bad or anything. It's just that sometimes it's just dark and I don't really want to run in the dark. So I'm jumping on the treadmill, and that can simulate the wrong things. It's like your body doesn't, even though it's still, it's you can get a good workout on a treadmill, you still are running on a machine. So just keep that in mind. And, obviously there's a time and a place for using a treadmill, but for the most part, you want to be simulating those conditions, whatever conditions that you're going to be in. And this goes back to what we just said in number 3, but really getting outside and experiencing that. And it's just like the, training in a pool versus training in the open water. And then there's the idea that there's a lot of places that people only have access to indoor pools. And indoor pools tend to be kind of stuffy and hot, and there's a certain element to that. Whereas if you're swimming outside, it's slightly different. And then if you're swimming in the open water, it's very different. So you really want to, keep those things in mind and do what you can to get in those outside conditions.
And also, if you are in a pool and you can't get outside, then you also need to work on those endurance sets, because in the ocean, you don't have lane or walls to flip off of. You go nonstop. So you need to do sets like blind sets, where you close your eyes and do a set which mimics not being able to see the bottom of the ocean. And psychologically, that helps, you adjust to get comfortable with that uncomfortable situation. Or doing flip turns at the flags instead of at the wall, so that your body's going at a nonstop rate and you don't have that recovery that you get when you do a flip turn. Also, the great thing about, doing a flip turn at the flags, you have to be very careful, especially if you've got people in front of you or behind you swimming, is that you speed up and slow down, which simulates the beginning of a race, or when you get caught on a huge pack in the race and you have to slow down because there's too much congestion, and then you speed up to either catch up with someone or to get back into the rhythm, or if you go off course and you need to speed up to get back on course, doing that type of simulation in the pool can help.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, number 5 is the most controversial topic in the history of triathlon and endurance sports, which is nutrition.
Yeah, we're going to get a lot of emails about this. But, if your race is 6 weeks out, if you tried to go from a complete carb burner right now to a complete, ketogenic low-carb diet, you're going to be miserable for about 2 to 3 weeks. And then it's going to be incredibly hard to adjust your training in the 3 weeks up to the race. So you essentially, I wouldn't say wasted 6 weeks of training, but you did something different in the past 6 weeks, which might not be beneficial or the most beneficial for your race. So if you're, very close to your race, don't change anything quite yet. Don't make drastic changes. Obviously, including more fruits and vegetables into your diet, a great change no matter where you are in your race season. But as far as sports and racing nutrition, stick to what you've been doing because your body's acclimated to that. At the same time, if you're, 6 to 8 months out from your race, you've got the time to make the adjustments that you need to. Figure out what your body needs as far as nutrition for that race and go with it. Once again, if you're building up 6 to 8 months out from an Olympic, then, you're racing at a higher intensity. Your body might need a little bit more carbs. But, train your body the way it wants it to. And you've got time to make adjustments in the latter case.
Yeah, and this goes back to my interview with Mark Sisson last time. We talked about the primal way of training, the primal endurance method. And that involves going to the kind of more low-carb-ish diet where you're really not eating the processed carbs and you're eating more of the, like I said, vegetables, meats, fish, those type of things. But Chris, you're right. It is tough if you have a carb addiction. It is tough to get off of them, but at the same time, it's worth it. I've had like Vince Sesto, one of our ambassadors here at Tri Swim Coach. He has several blog posts on our site talking about how he basically cut out all sugar altogether and went low carb. And it was a little tough at first, but he's had some major gains from that. He's been like killing his personal records he's shattering them. And he's also got a ton more energy in general. So it is a worthwhile thing to do. And if you follow the kind of primal way of doing things, you'll start to see that. And, one way of maybe not so healthy to look at it as like all or nothing. Like you can make little changes. Like if you're doing that all carb kind of diet, which I used to do, and, that is not sustainable. I can tell you that for sure. It's like doing tons and tons of carbs does not work. So if you're doing that now and you want to make those changes, you want to kind of lose a little bit of that extra weight you may have, and you want the energy, you want the sustainability in the sport, then, just think about just a couple things. Like, what is it that you kind of eat on a regular basis that you're always buying that is kind of your downfall? Like maybe just cut out that one thing for now. And then you can start tackling the other things, one by one, instead of going, okay, now I'm going to go 100% over to this other way of eating.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, but nutrition is obviously a big topic, and we could do several podcasts just on that. But if you want to get into a program that really does work, is that primal endurance is something that I believe in strongly. And I think that, it's exciting to bring that to the endurance world, because not to like toot my own horn, but I was talking about this in like 2002 and people were like, what? Like, I love my Cliff bars. Like, I don't want to, this is crazy. And now it's kind of cool to see that it's starting to become more normal, more mainstream to say, hey, maybe we're eating too many carbs.
But regardless if you're going Atkins, anti-Atkins, primal, paleo, whatever, it's the message that we want, to send is figure out all that information now. Figure out what works best for you now so that come race day, you've nailed it down. You've got all the details worked out. You know what works for you. You know what doesn't work for you. And you're not scrambling the night before the race to figure out what your nutrition program is. So figure out that now. Figure out what you want to, figure out how you're going to execute it. Start practicing that during your training sessions and during the intensity that you're going to be going at, so that you don't run into a panic attack a week before.
Exactly. So there you have it. There's our 5 tips to get you ready for race season, whatever part of the season you may be in. So I hope you liked that. I hope you enjoyed it. And I just want to say before we sign off today, I want to thank everyone for supporting the show, for supporting Try Swim Coach. 100 episodes. It's awesome to see it just grow. I mean, I've seen the downloads of just keep growing all the time. And it's just incredible to see this kind of support. And we've also we've kind of changed things up a little bit. And we've got a new video for the 3 swim tips, and I'll put the link in the show notes there, but it's kind of a cool video that we did. We've got some footage from underwater. We've got some footage on, how to do breathing, and then we've got some humor placed in there. So, I'll have that video up. I don't have, the URL is kind of long, so if I read it out here, no one's going to remember it, but that'll be in the show notes. And Chris, I want to thank you for being a part of this as well. I mean, you've really helped the podcast grow. You've helped Try Swim Coach grow, and your knowledge and the enthusiasm that you bring is just awesome. So,
my pleasure. I love working with you all.
Yeah, cool, awesome. Well, again, and congratulations to everyone that is listening and is taking on this endeavor of doing a triathlon. We wish you the best, and we will have another show for you very soon. Thanks again, and have a good week, everyone, and we'll talk to you soon.
Train hard and race hard.
Thanks for listening to another episode covering swimming and triathlon mastery. To get your free online swim clinic, just go to tryswimlessons.com. Give us your name and email, and we'll have session number 1 off to you right away. Begin your process of befriending the swim and laughing at the water now.